Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest monologue. Today from Bern in Switzerland, where I'm visiting. Um, and this one will pick up from our recent arguments in Kenya about the dropping of mathematics from the giving of the students options of dropping math from the curriculum going forward under CBC. There's a lot of arguments, and a lot of people, myself included, felt that it's somehow the government is against math or technical education. But having thought more about it, I realized that that's not the case. It's actually a philosophical problem because you can even hear from the many people who foolishly support the government's position. It's because they don't understand what education is. We don't, by and large, Kenya government and many Kenyans do not even understand what education is. And we are equating it with training. Now, education is development of the person, development of the mind. Training, on the other hand, is utilitarian and primitive, like training a dog to sniff out drugs so that we can keep our airports safe, and or training of armed personnel so that they can be disciplined enough to shoot people without a second thought. That kind of thing. Education is meant to develop the person. So you hear many Kenyans foolishly saying, "I've never used maths." These are people in STEM. One was a doctor saying, "I've never used maths since I left high school," and it's baffling on 2 points that he would say that, and secondly, that obviously in medical practice there's a lot of use of mathematics in the way you think and calculate things you're doing. And the saddest thing is that he was too philosophically stunted to realize that he was even using maths, and he thought he wasn't. But fast forward to now, I've been teaching giving some philosophy lectures here in Bern. And one of the things that struck me, I gave a lecture on the philosophical problems the flawed philosophy of sustainability. And one of the videos was one of my slides, the final slides was a video I really like from a friend of mine called Paul Kirui. He took it in Kazinga in Uganda, and it shows elephants and buffaloes near at a waterfront in the Kazinga Channel, and there are kids playing close to them, and there are women washing clothes, and there are people going to their boats, and the buffaloes are not bothering anyone, and the people are not bothering the buffaloes or elephants. People found that very charming. I love that short video. But there was one question someone asked, and I instantly knew it was a Kenyan. He said, because I said that video shows what our conservation scene should be, us going about our livelihoods and finding a way to live with our wildlife without necessarily the presence of tourism activity, etc. And he said that video actually shows that we don't care, we don't value our wildlife the way Europeans value wildlife. And he even went on to tell me, even here in Bern, you see people actually going out and feeding the pigeons, the feral pigeons that hang around European cities. And he said that shows how much they value wildlife, unlike us who just go about our business, washing clothes and going to our boats without caring about wildlife. And this shows this was not his fault. This is a snapshot of the intellectual or philosophical weakness of Kenyan society. Um, we cannot find positions of our own on anything, it seems, and this is what creates problem with the concept of sustainability. We don't know or have any standards of our own on what sustainability is. That's why we wait for UNEP, US government, various other foreign interests, tourism interests to tell us what sustainability is. That's why we are jumping on the bandwagon of so many things that are being applied elsewhere, because we can't make our own standards. And that's why even our government has fallen into the trap that villagers are falling into. I was just sharing an article the other day of some people signing a 50-year agreement to lease some land for tourism to a foreign interest, and I was appalled at the foolishness of it. But this shows our problem. Foreign interests are considered to be what we need to follow, and these people obviously coerced or bribed in some way to accept this inequitable agreement. But you even find our government with all the army of advisors, civil servants, etc. They've jumped onto the carbon trade bandwagon, and our government is like the villagers, equally waiting for this free carbon trade money to come. Talking about and the minister, Mr. Duale, a short time ago said we are owed billions and billions of dollars in climate reparations. And to me, the saddest thing is that we can have someone at such a high level of government foolish enough to think that the West is going to pay us for the damage they're doing to the climate. It's madness, but it's the philosophical weakness of Kenya. I'd understand if a villager was conned into thinking someone's going to pay him for climate change, but we can't have that at the level of government. So here we are still waiting. Kenya full of carbon credits, carbon trade projects, no one having been paid or received payment for the same, but we still believe in this fallacy. So that's why things like education, we choose to remove math, and people say yes, we don't need maths, because in our minds we are already technicians or trained beings like the sniffer dogs. We don't need maths to go and work as a domestic worker in Saudi Arabia, which is Alfred Mutua's, the Minister for Labor's biggest success, selling us into slavery. We don't need maths for that. That's what people think. And it is not the removal of maths. So the government is not against maths. The government is against education. It's not that they don't want you to understand maths. They don't want you to be a rounded, educated person. They want you to be trained to take instructions, trained to be competent in taking instructions and implementing them. That's why we called our curriculum competency-based, not education-based, competency-based. So what we are doing is like training sniffer dogs. And the way it is working, because every time you say these things, the first thing a Kenyan asks you is, so what do you want me to do? He wants me to train him. I cannot train you to educate yourself. I cannot train you to reject your training. That's something one must do themselves. So what we must do is educate ourselves outside the classroom. We must look for stuff, we must read it, and it starts from us. The government, ministry, the schools are not going to do it for us. So let's embrace philosophy. Let's understand the philosophy of agriculture, philosophy of education, of engineering, whatever it is we are doing. Because if we don't do that, we will just be trained like trained sniffer dogs. We will not be educated like educated people and philosophers. And going forward, my business now is my speciality now is the philosophy of conservation. It's not training in conservation. I know how to walk transects, collect data, analyze data, write papers, and do statistics and collect biological samples. I know how to do that. That's my training. The philosophy I'm talking about now is my education. If you want, as I said before, if you want to see what trained biologists are, they're the biologists who are heading KWS and presiding over extrajudicial killings. If they were educated, KWS would not be so cruel. But since they're just trained, they're exercising competency, not education or wisdom or intellect. That's the difference. Training is capability, behavioral patterns. Intellect is the ability to understand the philosophy of what you're doing and why you're doing it. So let's pursue philosophy in whatever field we are operating in. And if your kid chooses to drop maths, still talk to them about maths. Do simple maths because it matters. It will make them a better person. And since the schools are not going to do it for us, we need to do it for ourselves. Because our politicians know that as long as we are trained people and not educated people, they can manipulate us the way they like what they're doing now. So let's resist. Let's embrace education. Let's embrace philosophy of whatever it is we are doing. Let's reject training. We are not dogs or horses to be trained to jump over barriers or sniff drugs.